What's going on, guys? No guys here, welcome back to another video. Today's video we're going to be speaking about the 3-5-2. I'm going to explain to you in detail and show you in depth how to use the 3-5-2, a deadly formation I've been practicing for weeks and altering, and I think I've found the perfect formula for FIFA 20. It's basically a formation in which the left mid and right mids, what's important is they act as both as wingers and fullbacks. I've tested this with this very cheap team. This is my 10k team, a very cheap team that you can purchase yourself, and it works with this team, and I can assure you this will give you results. The main aspects of this formation is that I've designed a system that when you're defending, it becomes a flat 5-4-1 in some respect. So that means you're defending compact and you're basically defending in a unit, using your striker to basically knock down the midfield and your defense line is sitting back. But also this means that when you're attacking, it becomes a very deadly formation of a 3-2-5. Now when you're attacking, you're overloading your opponent, especially against the 4-1-2-1-2, which is the meta. You're breaking the gaps on the wide areas, and what you're doing here is you're overloading your opponent's defense. So even if they are using one depth or park the bus, you can still get through with the certain parameters that which I'll show you in a second, should I say. As I said, another aspect of this formation which I'm greatly proud of saying is that it's a very deadly counter-attack formation. There's a specific instruction that I've put on specific players which allows you to outmaneuver your opponents on the counter-attack. In some respect, your strikers, they run in out of nowhere, surprise attacks, and your left mid and right mid are overloaded on the wings. So it's really hard to defend against. As I said, it's both a formation that can be used in attacking and defensive phases of the game. It doesn't matter whether you're 1-0 ahead or 2-0 down or you're drawing. It's a very good formation to use. So let's get straight into the formation. I'm going to explain everything as usual in detail. So first things first, before we actually get into the tactics, I need to explain to you how the actual players are positioned and how they move. We'll get into the instructions in a bit, but defensively what happens is your left mid and right mid, they come back into almost left back and right back position. So you have your back line 5. Now the two CDMs in the midfield, they stay put, they do not go anywhere. But what happens is that the cam stays forward. This is what you need to understand. The cam stays forward. The cam is in some respect the most important player. So if you have someone like Neymar, or you have the best player in your team as a striker, you're going to move this person to a cam. This person is going to be the playmaker and the heart of the formation. Then you have the two strikers. Now you see how it turns into a 5-4-1 is the 5 defender line up, but then the two strikers, they drop in between and they end up becoming the left mid and right mid. See, this is where things get interesting. The two strikers, they act as left forwards and right forwards, so they come back and help defensively. So they tuck in and they help the midfield. So they on either side of the centre mids. That's how it works. Now when you're attacking, it's a complete different story. Now when you're attacking, your striker is going to be ahead of everyone else. That's why your key player or your marksman player has to go in a cam position, because they're acting like a striker but only temporarily. What's going to happen is then your left centre mid or your right centre mid or the two strikers are then going to fly forward. Now this is where the outmaneuvering comes in, because these are going to run past your cam and your cam's going to be able to distribute the ball to the two strikers running forward. You see what I'm saying? So these guys are going to come from deep positions and run forward. It's going to create the unpredictability aspect of the formation. But then when that happens as well, when these guys run forward, the left mid and right mid, they also run forward as well. So what happens is you get a deadly counter-attack formation. You have 5 players running at you, and that's where the long ball tactic comes in check. That's why I suggested long ball, because you want these players, you want the 5 players to run forward. So that's why you want all your players to run forward. That's why you use a long ball tactic. It's because you want to integrate the system where they start deep and they run forward. Now your opponent's naturally going to have to commit more players to get past the 5-4-1 block, and therefore they're going to commit more players forward. That means on a counter you'll be extremely deadly. That's why it's a very good formation. As I said to you, the cam is one of the most important positions in the game. But let's just get straight on to the tactics, and I'll explain that aspect first and then we'll come back to the instructions. Now what I've done here is I'm going to explain everything incrementally, because this is just going to avoid people just copying the tactics and then complaining after that certain aspects are not working. So I suggest you listen to the reasonings why the certain parameters are in place. First of all, the defensive style is unbalanced. Now technically speaking, when this formation drops back into a 5-4-1, it's a very defensive formation, but also you don't want to have your defense really far back. You see, with this formation, you don't want to be sitting back in your half. You want to be in some respect in the middle of the pitch. You don't want to be pushing. You don't want your players to go out of position. The key thing here with the defensive styles is if you use pressure on heavy touch or if you have, for example, a certain one like press after possession loss, you're going to start creating gaps in your defense. Once you create one certain gap in your defense, this is when the formation starts failing. So you don't want AI to make decisions for you when to push. You want to be able to control that yourself. So that way, if you decide to move your CDM out of position, you know where your right back is and you can cover for that right back. That's what I'm trying to say. Now going to the width now. For the width, leave this on 3. The reason why is the 3-5-2, although it seems to be a wide formation, it's actually not. If you take if you disregard the left mid and the right mid for now, it's actually a 4. If you think about it, it's like a very narrow 4-1-2-1-2. If you think about your centre back, the 2 CDMs, and if you look at the 4-1-2-1-2 shape, it's very much the same attacking. It's just defensively, these CDMs, they act as centre mids when you're attacking, but when you're defending, they're tucked in very deep. Now this is where you have a lot of more options to experiment. Now personally speaking, you want the middle to be compact as possible. The left mid and the right mid, they're going to come and help solidify the defence. So when you fall into in some respect, when you fall into the 3-5-2 defensive, which kind of goes to like a 5-4-1, what happens is that the left mid and right mid, they're basically playing as fullbacks. But you want the middle of the pitch to be narrow as possible. That's why I've gone with 3 width. If you have a wider width, what's going to happen is you're going to have too many holes in the center of the pitch. Especially the meta this year is the 4-2-3-1 still, and also the 4-1-2-1-2. So you want to defend the middle of the pitch, and that's why it's very crucial and important to leave this on 3 width defensively. Now moving on to a depth. Now I've gone with a depth of 5. Now the reason why is, there's 2 reasons why a depth of 5. 1, I don't want to be parking the bus, and nor do I want to be congested. 2, this is a very good formation for possession based tactics. So if you want to hold the ball or you want to break down your opponent, it's really good. But what's more important is you need time for your left mid and right mids to recover. So as you can see, your left mid and right mids, they're flying up and down the pitch. Now in this example, I'm using a cheap 10k team, but stamina could be much of an issue. If you have too much of a lower depth, there's too much distance that your left mid and right mid have to travel, and what that's going to create is going to create more gaps in your defense for your opponent to exploit. And if you have too much of a high depth, you're just going to leave yourself done on a counter attack, especially even when you're defending, and let's say you're building up the play, you might find your players are too far forward. You kind of want your players to be a bit more back so they're making the runs in behind. I'll get to that in a second, but that's why I'd go with a defensive depth of 5. I wouldn't really touch that. The reason why is I've just been fine-tuning this myself, and I kind of found the perfect balance of maintaining stamina but also having, to some respect, the flying fullbacks, if that makes sense. Now in regards to the offensive style, now there's 2 different offensive styles which I'll say which is very good for this. I wouldn't use fast build-up play because it's not really, this formation is not really designed for fast build-up play, although the 5-2-1-2 and in fact some of the other formations I do recommend fast build-up play. In this certain formation I wouldn't recommend it. It's between long ball and balanced. Now long ball is really good. Now it's not the simple fact that players make runs in behind, is that players, they move forward a bit more and their positioning is a bit more different. So when you do have the ball, they kind of they attempt to make runs forward, if that makes sense. Probably the best way I can explain it to you. The problem with balance is it's kind of very much depending on what AI decides what's best in line with instructions. Now what I would say to you, if you're below a gold 1 player, leave this on long ball. If you're gold 1 and above, leave this on balance, because you know how to ask players to come short and come close using RB, for example, or R2, and you also know how to make or force players to make runs in behind using L1. So if you know how to do that, leave that on balance. If not, leave it on long ball. Don't forget, long ball is not what is depicted in this diagram over here. It's not, it's not you attempting to go for long balls. It's just that when you're looking to find the left mid and the right mid, long balls is very important, and plus the strikers is very important, but I'll get on to that in a second. Now the width, attackingly, I went with 4. To be honest, I didn't want too much of a gap between, as usual, between the defensive width and the offensive width, because when you do have the possession of the ball, and when you don't have possession of the ball, should I say rather, and then when you do have possession of the ball, you don't want so much of a big transition. In some respects, you want to keep it same and compact, so that way you can basically play the quick 1-2s and escape from your half immediately, if that makes sense. Problem is, when you go with too much of a high width, then you lose the ball. That's when troubles, and that's when the trouble starts, and that's when holes in your defense start opening up. I think 4 width is very good, because don't forget, as I said, the left mid and the right mid, they're going to offer width when they charge forward. They're going to offer the width. The rest of the formation, you want to be narrow and compact as possible. You want them to be attacking like 4-1-2-1-2. Don't forget, when you're attacking, remember, these two players, they advance forward, so you basically have in some respect, a 5-man striker line, because you have your flat 4 strikers and then a cam. So it's very interesting the way this works, but we'll get into that in a second. But that's why I would say strongly recommend you to go no more than 4. And in terms of players in the box, I left this on 7. You could probably experiment yourself, but the positioning of the players and the way I want this formation to work, I'd recommend leaving this on 7. And corners and free kicks, to be completely honest, it's completely up to you. If you deem that you want to have more players up for a corner or for a free kick, then feel free to adjust that. It won't affect the formation so much. Just do bear in mind, the more players you have forward, the more chance you are going to be susceptible to the counter-attack, so do bear that in mind. Okay, so going back to the instructions again. So you've probably seen the screen before, and I'm going to explain to you the 2 instructions. So for the striker, we both have them on getting behind. I know we have the long ball tactic, but I would recommend getting in behind. One thing I would say to you again, if you're a gold 1 player here, I would leave this on balance, because you probably know what you're doing. You know when to, for example, press L1 to push the players forward, if that makes sense. Now you see the reason why they're on getting behind. Now let me show you this clip, for example. Here you can see this clip defensively 5-4-1 block. As soon as I get the ball and I advance forward, just watch the 2 strikers, then a left forward, right forward, kind of reserved left centre mid, right centre mid position. The cam gets hold of the ball, he's far forward, then the 2 strikers, they pounce forward, and as you can see, this ball gets played, which you will see in a second, and that's what brings a player into a very good position. Now that wouldn't happen if the formation wasn't laid out like this, because the striker would be too far forward. It's the fact that the striker is deep which creates the confusion for your opponents, and that's why it's hard for them to defend against it. So for both the strikers, it's getting behind. Now, what allows the 2 strikers to kind of drop into the position? Do you know how I said they drop into like either side of the they drop into either side, the left centre mid, the 2 CDM, should I say rather, is the comeback on defense element. The way the system works, the way the instructions work is they will come back and they will defend in the 4. They'll basically be a left mid and right mid in some respect. So try to find players with good stamina. It's not that important for the stamina, but I would recommend, above 80 obviously is ideal. But if you have someone like Mertens or Insigne who haven't got the best stamina, you might have to maybe adjust a player or so, or maybe move them into a cam position. Now the cam itself is always on stay forward. For the sole reason is, as I said to you, the cam is your marksman player. Your best player, in some respects you could think of it as like in Barcelona you have Lionel Messi. Now he's one of the main players in the team, and you can argue the play kind of revolves around Messi. In some respect, the play is going to revolve around your cam position. This is going to be the player that's going to be there to make the 1-2. This is the kind of guy that's going to do a 1-2 with your striker, do a 1-2 with your striker, and then make the run in the middle, or make a run in behind, or collect the ball from midfield. He's going to be the connect from your centre mid to your strikers and also to your left mid and right mid. He's going to be the player that's in the heart of the entire team. So you need to find, in some respect, a player that's good all around, got some decent passing. I'd go with a dead eye. Don't worry too much about the, I suppose you can say, you can argue the stamina, because you won't be doing that much moving. He's going to be in a striker position and get into the box, what I have him for. So when you do get into a crossing situation, he can then run into the box last minute, make those last minute runs, and then latch onto the ball, for the easy lofted pass across the goal. We know how OP that is this year. Now this is where it gets interesting, the left mid and right mid. Now I know that the left mid and right mid, in contrast to last year, stamina is still very much important, and so is pace. Ideally you want pacey players, but I know not all the left mid and right mids are going to have very high stamina. I understand it's early in the game. It's not like Team of the Year last year, especially with my 5-2-1-2. So I've got some specific instructions. Come back on defense. So these guys are basically going to come back. So when you're defending, these guys are going to equally do a defending and attacking work rate. To be honest, the actual work rates of the player is not that important, in all honesty. High though would be very much recommended. I would recommend high for the work rates if you can find a player. Some good players like Atal, Cuadrado, they're very good players that they can both have very good stand and slide tackling, but also have very good offensive stats. Players like those easy slot into this team. Now, with chance creation, we left this on balance. We don't want them to cut inside. We want them to stay where they are. In some respect, if, for example, your striker decides to deviate and go wide because you trigger him to go wide, your left mid will, or your right mid will kind of cave into that spot. So that's why you want to leave it on balance. You want AI to make the decision, not you. Same with support runs. I would leave this on balance. I wouldn't really touch this. You have the long ball already on the tactics, so they're still going to fly forward, so don't worry about that. Support crosses get into the box, so when you do get into a position where, let's say for example, your left mid goes to cross the ball, your right mid will come and try to attack the box when you get into an attacking position. So they're going to run into the box and they're going to try to pounce on the ball depending on which area the cross is, or for example when you do a lofted pass across goal. Now what's important here is conservative interceptions. Now the reason why I put this on conservative is you don't want them to be out of position. A lot of players will try to fish your left centre mid and right centre mid. What I mean by that is they'll do a simple 1-2 with their winger. They'll try to move your left mid or right mid out of position. Now this is where you need to be smart. That's why I left it on conservative for two reasons. One, so you don't get pushed out of position, and two, more importantly, they conserve their stamina. You don't want them to be creating gaps when you're defending. That's the worst thing you want. You don't want them to be, aggressively pushing to, to a player. Then your whole left-hand side or your whole right-hand side is completely clean through, because that's the heart, that's the key player. Especially, don't forget, when you're transitioning from attacking to a defensive position, let's say you're attacking, you lose the ball, don't forget, these guys, they have to run back. The left mid and right mid, they have to run back. So you don't want them to make any mistakes. And plus, more importantly, conservative interceptions, it does reserve a bit more stamina. Now, the CDMs, I left them both on stay back while attacking. As I said, cut passing lanes. I think that's why it's very important to have CDMs. I think it's probably one of the most important things, especially this year. Cutting the passing lanes is one of the most important things to do. Another thing that's important here is the centre back are all on balance. I don't have them on anything. I don't have them on play a striker during the attack. They're all on stay back while attacking, because everyone always asks about the centre backs. The goalkeeper itself, now personally, I leave this all unbalanced. To be honest, saving outside the box, you can argue sometimes you play a high line, but truthfully speaking, I wouldn't really touch this. It's best to leave it as it is. If you want to ever bring, for example, your keeper out, just use a triangle button and use it at your own discretion. Chips are also very prominent this year, so you don't want to have a situation where your goalkeeper on his own is just running to attempt to get the ball, and realistically he's not going to get it. Again, with saves on crosses, again, this is entirely up to you. I would personally just leave this on balance, and that is basically the formation. That's how the formation works. It's a very good formation, both attacking, both defensively. As I said, what's important is the transition from attack to a defense. Give it a try. I think you'll really enjoy this formation. I just done one final thing. In terms of the formation itself, people are asking me, what work rates. To be honest, if you can get a cam which is high, medium or high, low, the cam's not that important because he's on stay forward. The two strikers, if you can get like something like Ben Yedder, high, it does make a bit of a difference. And the same for the left mid and right mid. If you can prioritize someone that's high, if you get someone that's high-low, you might see them a bit more high up. They will still come back and defend because their instructions are still going to override in some respect the work rates, but they might be in a more advanced position, so do bear that in mind. And for the CDMs, to be honest, these guys, they act as centre mids. They're in some respect the pivot players. When you don't have a place to go, or let's say for example you're outnumbered, and let's say your counter attack is failed and you're in your opponent's half, these are the two players that are going to collect the ball from midfield. So try to get these players with good passing, good versatile players. The most important thing for the left mid and right mid is just pace. If there's one thing you can prioritize, it's just pace, because these guys are going to be flying back and forth most of the time. You want them to run back and defend as much as they can, and you also want them to run forward as much to get in behind. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take it easy, boys.